Sean O'Malley is one of the biggest anomalies in the UFC, from having a somewhat mundane personality but being one of the biggest stars in the sport, one of the biggest social media followings, and bringing in a bunch of new eyes. He is undoubtedly the biggest rising star in the UFC, barring maybe his Sean Counterpart and Sean Strickland. But his run to the title was really weird. Basically, everyone he beat to get to the title to this point was unranked and out of the UFC now, barring Petr Yan, and of course Chito Vera beat him and is now fighting him for the title, coming off a win against Pedro Munoz, who wasn't really that high ranked in the first place. So that was definitely just a money fight. But Sean O'Malley being the GOAT is mainly due to the amount of time he has, the talent he has, and who he's going to fight coming up, as well as we're going to compare him to all the other past bantamweight GOATs and contenders. Getting into his run, big win before Petr Yan was against Paiva, who's a somewhat complete fighter, but he's completely out of the UFC now, and he was unranked at the time. And then he had the weird fight with Pedro Munoz that fought to no contest, and he lost the first round, but there wasn't much that really happened in that first round either. And then the big win against Petr Yan, who is #1 ranked, but since then Petr Yan has fallen off and hasn't won a fight in some time, and I feel like most people completely disregard his win over Corey Sandhagen. Over time, people might disregard that win, much like people disregard Conor vs. Cowboy, but we can't forget at that time Petr Yan was an absolute killer, and who knows, he might come back and go on a run before, because I think a lot of people, when Petr Yan was fighting Aljo and went on his title run, I think most people thought Yan was going to be the GOAT. Moving on from that, he fights Aljo, who had beat TJ Dillashaw, who had the weird injury. Then he beats Petr Yan twice, once with the illegal knee, so he didn't really beat him, and then the second time was a really close decision, 3-2 one way or the other, with a first round that basically judged the entire fight. So some people think Aljo is the bantamweight GOAT. Of course, Sean O'Malley thinks he's bantamweight GOAT, because if you beat the GOAT, you are the GOAT. I think there's a lot of debate on how good Aljo really was, but at the end of the day, that's a high ranked win, and Sean did knock him out cold, so there's not much debate there. But moving on to the contenders on who people think could be the GOAT, there's basically 4 names that come up. Renan Barão, but that was a long time ago when the division was still developing. The person that beat him, TJ Dillashaw, is of course another contender. He went on a run of 4 title defenses and had some really electric fights, losing the belt, getting the belt back. The whole PED allegations and steroids with the EPO really does take TJ out of it, as well as the fact that TJ did lose to Dominick Cruz in a fairly conclusive manner, and then he comes back to fight Aljo and loses at, of course, an older age, and he barely beat Corey Sandhagen. So is TJ really the GOAT? Most likely not. And his wins over Cody Garbrandt haven't aged too well, because Cody has gone on a skid, so there's a lot of debate there too. But the big one is Dominick Cruz. Now, Dominick Cruz, I believe, only has 2 title defenses in the UFC, but you have to remember, before they merged, he was the champion of the WEC, and I believe he had 2 title defenses there. So he's the main contender for bantamweight GOAT, the name that comes up the most. His inactivity during his prime is really what held him back the most. Comparing that to Sean also had inactivity, but that was when he was really young. Dominick Cruz lost some of his best years, so I think that's what takes it away from him. Also, he got completely dominated by Cody Garbrandt, one of the best title performances of all time, and some people think it literally is the best title performance of all time. But Dominick Cruz versus TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt was a great rivalry. Dominick Cruz versus Team Alpha Male. He has a lot of really solid wins, but getting knocked out by Henry Cejudo, somewhat controversial stoppage, but at the end of the day, he did get knocked out, and he is also going on a skid. He lost to Chito Vera, then getting injured again. He lost a lot of really good years, and it's basically 4 to 5 title defenses is the peak of what you can get at bantamweight. Some people throw Henry Cejudo in there as a curveball, but the whole retiring thing, then coming back, losing the close fight to Aljo, it's a bit hard to say Henry. I think a lot of people like to rank Henry high in UFC debates or MMA debate. He has the gold medal, he has the flyweight crown, and of course the bantamweight crown, Triple C, the whole deal. I don't think in the individual bantamweight level most people are saying Henry Cejudo, but you could definitely say peak fighter, like one fighter in the entirety of bantamweight for 1 title defense. You could say prime Henry or prime Cody, that would make sense. But in a totality debate, Sean doesn't really have to do that much to become the bantamweight GOAT. For one, he beat Aljo, Petr Yan, who we talked about. They were 2 of the peak of the division for basically 2020 to 2023, and now he's fighting Chito, who really doesn't deserve the title shot and should be a easy win for him, even though he did lose the first time. I don't think many people think Chito is gonna catch Sean. Sean has so many more ways to beat him. The whole low leg kick thing was really the only reason Chito did win that fight, and Sean just seems to be hitting a stride. He beat Aljo while injured, and even so, I think the main component of Sean being the GOAT is who he's gonna be after Chito. Now, the 2 people he's probably gonna fight are either Merab or Henry, because they're fighting in a #1 contenders fight, and I think if Merab wins, Sean has a chance of beating Merab. Merab is obviously not the cleanest striker. He has aggressive grappling on a whole nother level, and I do think if he gets Sean down, it is probably not going to go his way, but I think Sean has known this entire time what Merab is going to do and what everyone tries to do to Sean, which is take him down, kick his legs out, and I think seeing what Merab did to Petr Yan, Sean also knows what he's dealing with. It is constant aggression, and Sean has some physical advantages that Petr doesn't in terms of the reach. Now, if Sean fought Henry and Henry beats Merab, I think most people would think Sean can beat Henry. Henry's already 36. He's a lot shorter. His striking isn't nearly as good as Sean's. Seeing how Henry struggled to take Aljo down, I don't think he's going to be able to take Sean down just because of his age and because Sean has been training grappling for basically every single camp. And just taking that fight for what it is, I don't even know if Henry has a chance against Merab. Merab seems to be hitting his physical prime, and Henry seems to be on the decline. And the other name that Sean is going to fight after at some point, most likely, is Corey. Corey versus Umar is getting booked and unbooked on this continuous scale, and Umar versus Corey booking is a lot like Sean versus Petr Yan. It's just to get Umar to that title picture because no one seems to fight him, and if Corey is willing, then Corey is going to fight Umar because no one else is going to take that fight. Now, if that fight doesn't happen, Corey is likely going to earn the title shot regardless, and Sean versus Corey is probably one of the most interesting matchups in the division. They're basically the same style of striker, really tall, really long, except Corey uses his wrestling a lot more. Sean has a lot of ways to win that fight, but so does Corey. Corey with that grappling advantage over Sean is something that everyone's going to point to when it comes to that. I can already hear the arguments. They have equal striking and Corey has the better grappling, so Corey is going to win. But in my eyes, that's a straight 50-50 fight as well, and also probably one of the most exciting matchups the UFC could make in bantamweight. The other end of that is Umar. Now, we haven't seen Umar against title competition, and I think the main reason everyone thinks Umar is Khabib Conor, Umar Sean O'Malley. Now, it does feel a bit like, oh, we got Conor Khabib at home with Umar Sean, but I don't really know much about Umar. He hasn't fought much. He's basically destroyed everyone that he's fought. Trying to create some tactical discussion about it would be kind of goofy because at the end of the day, I've never done MMA, so I don't really know how that would go without seeing it against high-level people, because otherwise, I'm basically just guessing. But I do think at the end of the day, Sean seems to have a better idea of how to train against grapplers than Conor did, because Conor didn't seem to take the Khabib fight too seriously. It doesn't seem like Sean is going to make the same mistakes that Conor did. But like I said, that's speculation and really has nothing to do with the fight. But overall, only needing 4 to 5 title defenses, Sean becoming the bantamweight GOAT may still seem crazy, just seeing as everyone thought he was overrated for so long. But there's a lot of ways he can do it, and it doesn't seem to be that hard in such a competitive division that doesn't have that many title defenses to its GOAT contenders. So if you enjoyed this video, check out this video on the history of Sean Strickland and why he is one of the most tragic fighters in the UFC. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget, we're just getting started, we're going to stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next video.